Before we dive into today's gripping story, we want to take a moment to appreciate you, our amazing subscribers, new viewers, and the incredible community that makes Moonlight Tales by Samzy so special. Your likes, shares, and thoughtful comments mean the world to us, and we're beyond grateful for your support. If this is your first time here, welcome. You're in for a ride filled with drama, suspense, and unexpected twists. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest stories. And of course, drop a comment below. We love hearing from you, and your support keeps us going. Now, sit back, relax, and let's dive right back into the story, because things are about to get even more intense. Months had passed, and Sophie began to feel very strange. She would wake up feeling dizzy, her head spinning like a merry-go-round. Sometimes she would cry without even knowing why. Other times, she would feel very happy for no reason at all. Ray noticed it too. One minute Sophie would laugh at a silly joke he made, and the next minute she would snap at him for leaving the toothpaste cap off. It was confusing, but Ray was patient. He thought maybe she was just tired from moving to a new city and settling into their beautiful home. One morning, Sophie woke up feeling very sick. She rushed to the bathroom and threw up everything she had eaten the night before. Ray rubbed her back and tried to comfort her, but deep down he was getting very worried. Sophie had never been this sick before. They decided it was time to go to the hospital and find out what was wrong. At the hospital, the nurse smiled warmly and asked Sophie a lot of questions. After a few tests, the doctor suggested that she should do a scan. Sophie lay down nervously on the bed while the machine whirred and beeped. The room was quiet except for the little sounds from the machine. Sophie's heart raced as she watched the doctor's face carefully. He smiled brightly and said, "Congratulations, Mrs. Ray. You are pregnant." Sophie gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. Pregnant? She could not believe her ears. She had been praying and wishing for a miracle for so long, but she never thought it would happen so soon. Tears of joy welled up in her eyes. She whispered a small prayer of thanks to God. But the surprises were not over yet. The doctor frowned a little, looking more closely at the scan. Then he smiled again, even wider than before. "Wait a minute," he said. "You are not carrying just one baby. You're carrying 3. You're having triplets." Sophie's eyes widened. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Triplets? 3 babies at once? She thought she was dreaming. She asked the doctor to repeat it, just to be sure. He laughed gently and nodded. "Yes, ma'am. 3 strong, healthy babies." Sophie couldn't wait to tell Ray. She held the scan pictures tightly as she rushed home. Her heart was beating fast, and she couldn't stop smiling. When she got home, Ray was sitting on the couch watching TV. She walked over to him, her hands shaking with excitement. "Ray," she said, barely able to control her happiness. "I have something to show you." She handed him the scan pictures. Ray took them and stared at them for a moment, confused. "You're pregnant?" he asked, his voice full of hope and amazement. "Yes," Sophie said, laughing through her happy tears. Ray jumped up and hugged her tightly. He lifted her off the ground and spun her around carefully. He was so happy that he almost cried. But then Sophie smiled mischievously and said, "Look at it properly, Ray. Look closely." Ray sat down and looked again. He tilted the scan to the light, squinting his eyes. Suddenly, he saw it. Baby 1. Baby 2. Baby 3. His jaw dropped. His eyes grew as big as saucers. 3, he shouted. "We're having 3 babies?" Sophie nodded, giggling uncontrollably. Ray screamed with joy. He ran around the living room, singing and shouting like a little boy who just got his favorite toy. He grabbed Sophie's hands and danced with her. He even did a little funny dance move that made Sophie laugh so hard her cheeks hurt. "I'm gonna be a dad. Not just a one little munchkin, but 3. Ray shouted. He hugged Sophie again and kissed her forehead tenderly. "You're amazing, Sophie. You're truly amazing. God has blessed us beyond what we asked for." That night, they couldn't sleep. They stayed up late, talking about their future and making plans for the babies. Ray made a long list of names he liked, even though Sophie told him it was way too early. He didn't care. He wanted to be ready. Sophie began to take extra care of herself. She ate healthy food, took her vitamins, and went for regular checkups. Ray became very protective. He wouldn't even let Sophie lift anything heavier than a pillow. Whenever she needed something, he would jump up and run to get it for her. He even followed her around the house like a guard dog, just to make sure she didn't slip or fall. When Sophie's belly started to grow, Ray would sit beside her every night and talk to the babies. He would place his hand on her stomach and tell them funny stories or sing silly songs. Sometimes he would feel tiny kicks, and his face would light up like Christmas lights. Sophie felt like she was living a dream. Every day was filled with laughter, love, and excitement. Even when she felt tired or uncomfortable, Ray's love and care made everything easier. She often sat quietly, rubbing her growing belly and thinking about how far she had come. From being the poor, forgotten girl that nobody cared about to becoming a loved wife and soon-to-be mother of triplets. It was nothing short of a miracle. And deep down in her heart, Sophie knew that no matter what challenges came their way, she and Ray would face them together, hand in hand, with their 3 little bundles of joy leading the way into a bright and beautiful future. Mary wiped the sweat off her forehead as she stood at the large estate entrance, holding Gerald's hand tightly. Gerald was breathing heavily. He looked tired and sick. His hands shook a little, and his face was pale. Eric and Erica stood beside them, looking bored and frustrated. 2 tall security guards stood blocking the gate. They wore black uniforms and dark glasses, their arms crossed over their chests like statues. One of them shook his head and said firmly, "I'm sorry, but your names are not on the guest list. We can't let you in." Mary's heart sank. She looked at Gerald, then at her children. They had traveled for so many hours, hoping to see Sophie. Mary didn't think about calling ahead or getting a phone number. She just thought, maybe, just maybe, Sophie would open her arms and welcome them. "Please, sir," Mary said, her voice trembling, "we are Sophie's parents. We came from very far. Can't you help us?" The guard frowned. "We need the resident to call us." "No call, no entry." Mary turned to Eric and Erica. "Do any of you have their number?" Eric rolled his eyes. "No, Mummy, because you didn't think it was important," he snapped. Erica crossed her arms and pouted. "Now we have to sit here stranded for God knows how long, all thanks to you, Mummy." Mary's face turned red with anger. "You better shut the gutter you call a mouth before I shut it for you," she snapped back. Gerald slumped down on the small bench near the gate, looking weaker by the minute. His chest rose and fell heavily. He needed to rest, but there was nowhere comfortable to sit. The sun was hot, and the air was dry. Sweat poured down their faces. Their throats were dry and their stomachs rumbled loudly. They had not eaten anything since they left home early that morning. An hour passed. Then 2. Mary's legs hurt from standing so long. Gerald leaned against the wall, looking worse by the minute. Eric and Erica sat on the floor, grumbling loudly. "This is hopeless," Eric muttered. "I could be at home, watching TV, but no, I'm sitting on a dirty road because Mommy didn't plan," Erica complained. Mary felt tears sting her eyes. She had made a mistake. A big one. She just wanted to see Sophie, to say sorry, to beg her to help them. She had no idea it would be this hard. Suddenly, they heard the sound of a car engine. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows was driving slowly towards the gate. The shiny car sparkled under the sun. It was the kind of car that rich people drive. The guards quickly stood up straight. They waved their hands, signaling the car to stop. The SUV's window rolled down slowly. Inside, Ray sat in the driver's seat, wearing dark glasses. He looked at them. His face showed no emotion. For a moment, Mary thought maybe he didn't recognize them. But then she saw him give a small nod, as if to say, "I see you." Ray said a few words to the guards, but he didn't get down from the car. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just drove inside and disappeared behind the tall estate gates. Mary's heart broke a little more. She wiped her eyes quickly, hoping no one would notice her crying. "That's him. That's Ray," Eric said, pointing. Erica stood up and dusted her skirt. "Of course, that's him. Did you see the way he looked? Rich, powerful, and neat. Unlike some people," she added, shooting a look at her mother. "Will you shut up?" Mary snapped again. But inside, she couldn't help feeling small and embarrassed. Ray had seen them and he had driven past like they were nothing. The guards came back. "If you know the resident, call him. Otherwise, you cannot enter." But he saw us." Mary stammered. "No call, no entry," the guard said firmly. Mary sat back down, defeated. Gerald leaned his head back and closed his eyes. Eric kicked a stone on the ground. Erica pulled out a piece of gum from her pocket and started chewing loudly. Minutes felt like hours. The sun began to set. The sky turned orange and pink. Mary's hope was slipping away with the light. She thought about Sophie, the little girl she had once taken in. She remembered how she used to boss her around, treat her like a servant, even call her the daughter of a madwoman. Now, that same girl was living in a rich estate, behind tall, beautiful gates, while she, Mary, was locked out, begging to be let in. Tears filled her eyes again. "Please, God," she whispered under her breath. "Let her forgive us." Suddenly, one of the guards' radios crackled. He pressed a button and listened. His face changed. He nodded and looked at Mary and her family. "You can come in," he said shortly. Mary gasped. "Really?" "Yes." "Follow me." They quickly stood up. Gerald had trouble walking, so Eric helped him. Mary grabbed Erica's hand and squeezed it tightly. The big iron gates opened slowly. As they walked through, Mary looked around in amazement. The roads were clean and smooth. The lawns were trimmed perfectly. The houses were huge and beautiful, like something out of a magazine. Erica's mouth dropped open. She stared at the swimming pools, the fountains, and the fancy cars parked neatly by the houses. "Mummy," she whispered, "so Sophie has been living in luxury while we've been suffering?" Mary didn't answer. She just sighed deeply. They followed the guard toward a beautiful house at the end of the road. It was bigger than any house they had ever seen. The walls were white and shiny. Flowers lined the walkway. 2 fancy cars sat proudly in the driveway. A small fountain gurgled happily near the door. Mary's heart pounded in her chest. She felt fear, shame, and a tiny bit of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they would be able to fix things. They were led to the door. Ray was waiting for them, still looking calm but serious. His neat hair and sharp suit made him look like someone very important. He smelled of expensive cologne. "Come in," Ray said simply. Mary swallowed hard and stepped inside, not knowing what would happen next. Sophie was in the kitchen, humming softly as she washed the fruits they had just bought. Her belly was already showing a little, and she was feeling lighter than she had in months. The excitement of expecting triplets filled her heart every single day. She couldn't wait to meet her babies. She poured herself a glass of cold water and took a long sip, smiling at the thought of Ray decorating the nursery all by himself with little cartoon animals on the walls. Just then, Ray walked in. He had a strange look on his face. His eyes twinkled, but there was also a seriousness he rarely wore. "Guess who I just saw at the estate gate?" he asked, leaning against the kitchen counter. Sophie wiped her hands with a towel and chuckled. "I don't know." "Maybe your secret admirers again," she teased playfully. Ray shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips, but his eyes stayed serious. "No, babe. It's your foster parents. Mary and Gerald. They're outside. With their kids." The glass in Sophie's hand slipped. It fell to the floor, shattering into pieces. Water splashed everywhere, but she didn't even flinch. Her heart stopped for a second. Her whole body stiffened. "What?" she exclaimed, her voice shaky. She stared at Ray, hoping he was just joking. Maybe she heard wrong. Maybe it was just people who looked like them. But Ray nodded slowly. "I'm serious. It's them." Sophie grabbed the edge of the kitchen counter to steady herself. A flood of memories hit her all at once: the night she cried herself to sleep on a cold floor, the meals she watched them give to their real kids while she starved, the day they forced her into marrying Ray because they thought he was nothing but a dangerous ex-convict. Her breathing grew faster. "No! No, they can't be here. Not now. Not ever," she shouted. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away, angry that she even felt anything at all. Ray came closer and tried to take her hands in his, but she pulled away. "Why now, Ray? Why now that I'm finally happy? They threw me away like garbage when I had nothing. Now that God has blessed me, now they remember I exist?" Her voice cracked as she spoke. She began pacing back and forth across the kitchen floor, stepping over the shattered glass like she didn't even notice it. "They're here to bring bad luck again. I know it. Everything good I have now, they'll jinx it. I don't want to see them. I don't want them anywhere near me," she cried. Ray tried to calm her. "Sophie, maybe they're sorry." "Maybe." She cut him off sharply. "Sorry? They're sorry now that they're sick and poor? When I needed them, where were they? When I lost my first baby, did they even call?" Her voice grew louder with every word. "They don't deserve even a drop of my kindness. They made my life hell. Hell, Ray. And you want me to just welcome them like nothing ever happened?" She folded her arms tightly around herself as if she was trying to keep from breaking into a million pieces. Ray stayed quiet for a moment, letting her let it all out. He could see how hurt she was. He could feel the anger, the sadness, the betrayal all raw and still bleeding inside her. He stepped carefully over the broken glass and pulled her into a hug. At first, she resisted, her body stiff like wood. But then she melted into his arms and cried softly against his chest. After a few minutes, she pulled away and wiped her tears roughly. "I don't want to see them, Ray. Please. Just tell them to leave. Tell them I'm not home. Tell them I don't exist. Anything. I can't. I just can't deal with them." Ray sighed. They'd been waiting at the gate for hours now. They looked tired. "Gerald looks really sick. They didn't even have your phone number to call you. They just showed up." Sophie laughed bitterly. "They always show up when they need something, don't they? Always. They never show up just to check on me. Never." Her voice was full of pain, not anger anymore. Just sadness, deep and heavy. She sat down heavily on a kitchen stool, holding her head in her hands. I thought I moved on. I really thought I was over them. But seeing them again, even just hearing about them, it hurts so much, Ray. Ray bent down to her level and looked into her tired, tearful eyes. I'm not saying you have to forgive them, Sophie. I'm just saying, maybe hear them out? If only to get closure. If only to show them that you made it without them. Sophie shook her head firmly. I don't owe them anything. Not my time. Not my forgiveness. Not even my pity. They made their choice when they abandoned me. Now I'm making mine. Ray saw that her mind was made up. At least for now. All right, love, he said softly. I'll handle it. You don't have to see them if you don't want to. Sophie looked up at him with grateful eyes. She took a deep, shaky breath and tried to calm herself. Thank you, Ray. Thank you for always standing by me. I love you. He kissed her forehead gently. I love you too. Always. As Ray went out to call the security guards, Sophie called him back and told him to let them in at least so she could hear them out first before taking her final decision about them. Sophie sat on the soft gray couch, her arms folded tightly across her chest. Her heart was beating fast, and her stomach felt tight. She couldn't believe what Ray had just told her. Her foster parents Mary and Gerald were here. After all these years of pain, after everything they did, they had come back. The door creaked open, and slowly, Mary and Gerald stepped into the living room. They both looked completely different from how Sophie remembered. Gerald's face was pale and tired, his eyes sunken. Mary looked thinner, her shoulders drooping like a heavy load was resting on them. As soon as Mary saw Sophie, she fell hard onto her knees, not caring if she hurt herself. Tears poured down her face as she joined her palms together and began to beg. Sophie, my child, please, please forgive us, Mary cried, her voice shaking. We were wrong. We were very wrong. Gerald, who could barely stand properly, lowered himself onto the ground too. His hands trembled as he tried to hold back his tears, but he couldn't. The tears rolled down his cheeks like rain. Sophie, I am so sorry, he said, his voice cracking. We hurt you so badly. We don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, have mercy on us. Sophie just sat there, staring at them coldly. Her hands were clenched so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The memories flashed through her mind like a broken movie, the night she went to bed hungry, the morning she woke up to insults, the day they forced her to marry a man they believed was dangerous. The pain was still fresh. It had never really gone away. She blinked back the tears building in her eyes and finally spoke, her voice calm but full of anger. Why are you here? She asked, her words sharp like a knife. Mary sobbed harder. Because we realized we made a terrible mistake. Because we can't live with the guilt anymore. We are suffering, Sophie. Gerald is very sick. He has lung cancer. We don't know where else to turn. Sophie stood up slowly. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. She stared down at them, her eyes burning. So now I'm your child, she asked coldly. Where was all this love when you locked me out in the cold? When you forced me to marry an ex-convict, thinking it was the only way to get rid of me? Mary lowered her head in shame. Gerald wiped his face with his sleeve, shaking his head sadly. We were blinded by our selfishness, Sophie, Gerald whispered. We thought we were doing what was best for us, but we destroyed you in the process. Sophie's voice grew louder, her emotions pouring out. You destroyed me, she shouted. Do you know the nights I cried myself to sleep? Do you know how I lived like an animal in that broken house? Do you even know that I lost a baby because of the thugs you let near me? Mary gasped and covered her mouth in shock. Gerald's face crumbled with regret. "We didn't know," Mary cried. "If we had known, we would have." "You would have what?" Sophie cut in sharply. "Loved me? Helped me? Treated me like your own?" "No! You hated me from the moment you laid your eyes on me." The room was heavy with sadness. Even the air seemed thick. Ray stood quietly in the corner, watching everything with a heavy heart. Mary crawled forward, grabbing Sophie's hands tightly. Her tears soaked Sophie's skin, but Sophie didn't move. "I know we don't deserve it," Mary said, choking on her sobs. "But please, for God's sake, forgive us." Sophie looked down at her, her heart torn in two. A part of her wanted to scream and throw them out. But another part, a small soft part inside her, remembered the words Ray always told her: "Forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace." She pulled her hand away and stepped back. "I can't forgive you," Sophie said, her voice breaking. "Not today. Maybe not even tomorrow. Maybe never. The scars you gave me are too deep." Mary and Gerald nodded silently, accepting her words. They knew they had no right to ask for anything more. "But," Sophie continued, "because of God, and because Ray reminded me to leave vengeance to him, we will help you. We'll pay for Gerald's treatment. But don't think for 1 second that this means I've forgiven you. It doesn't. I'm doing this for God, not for you." Mary bent her head low, sobbing harder. Gerald pressed his forehead to the ground, thanking her over and over again. Ray came over and placed a warm hand on Sophie's shoulder. She didn't look at him, but she felt the strength of his presence and the calmness he carried. After a long silence, Ray called the housekeeper and asked her to serve snacks and drinks by the poolside. He told Mary and Gerald to wait there while he and Sophie talked privately. As Mary and Gerald slowly got up and followed the housekeeper out, Sophie stood frozen in place. She stared at the ground, her heart aching. Ray pulled her gently into a hug. She didn't resist. "You did the right thing," he whispered into her ear. "You are stronger than you think." Sophie closed her eyes and let the tears fall silently down her cheeks. She had survived the worst. She had become stronger. And though the road to healing was still long, she had taken the first step. But deep inside her heart, she knew one thing for sure: she would never, ever let anyone hurt her like that again. Afterwards, Ray came to the poolside where Mary and Gerald sat and gave them a fat envelope filled with money, then told them they can go and he'll contact them afterwards on when Gerald's treatments will begin. As they stood to leave, Erica remained seated and refused to move an inch. "Please, I'm not leaving this paradise to go back to that thatch house you people call our home," she said as she chewed her bubble gum loudly. Eric placed a hand over his mouth and chuckled, but just so that Mary won't notice lest he faces Mary's wrath. "Come on, shut up that your smelly mouth. Our house is now a thatch house, right?" "I don't blame you," Mary replied angrily. "Mummy, I just want to stay for a week. I need to cool off. You don't expect me to see the impeccable scenery here and not want to stay, huh?" Erica asked. But Ray interrupted their argument and agreed that Erica could stay. Erica couldn't contain her joy. She said that she'd stay anywhere at all as long as she doesn't go back with her parents for now. Erica stood by the door, waving happily at her family as they walked away. She didn't feel bad at all that she was staying behind. In fact, she was so happy that she could hardly hide her big, wide smile. The moment the gate closed behind them, she turned quickly and looked around the beautiful mansion. Her eyes shone like a child in a candy store. "This is my chance," she whispered to herself, giggling softly. "I'm going to enjoy every second of this." Sophie, being kind and polite, led Erica upstairs to show her the guest rooms. She opened 2 doors and allowed Erica to pick whichever one she liked. Erica walked into the first room. It was big, clean, and smelled like flowers. But when she entered the second room, her mouth fell open. The bed was huge and covered in soft, white sheets. A big, beautiful chandelier hung from the ceiling, sparkling like diamonds. There was even a small balcony with a view of the swimming pool outside. "I want this one," Erica shouted excitedly. Sophie smiled kindly and nodded. "All right. This one is yours." "Thank you, Sophie," Erica said sweetly, but deep inside, she was already thinking about how she would enjoy everything without feeling sorry. As soon as Sophie left and closed the door, Erica jumped high into the air and landed right on the fluffy bed. She laughed so hard she almost cried. She rolled from one side of the bed to the other, hugging the soft pillows tightly. "This is paradise," she said out loud. But Erica wasn't just thinking about resting or enjoying the beautiful room. No! She had bigger plans. Mischievous plans. She was thinking of how she could take even more advantage of the luxury around her. First, she opened all the closets and drawers. They were empty, but she imagined them filled with expensive clothes and jewelry. She started planning in her head. "I'll make them love me," she said. "I'll be so sweet and helpful that they'll want me to stay forever. And when that happens, I'll have everything I ever dreamed of." She grinned slyly, feeling proud of herself. Later that night, when it was time for dinner, Sophie called Erica downstairs. Erica came running, looking innocent and cheerful. She sat at the big dining table where delicious food was laid out: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables, and fresh fruit juice. Erica ate carefully, pretending to have good manners, even though she was dying to grab the biggest chicken leg and stuff her face. She smiled at Ray and Sophie, making sure to say, "Thank you for the food," like a sweet little girl. Sophie and Ray smiled back, happy to see her being polite. After dinner, Erica offered to help clear the table. She carried plates and wiped the table clean. Sophie was surprised. "Wow, you're so helpful," Sophie said warmly. Erica beamed. "I just want to be useful. I'm really grateful you're letting me stay here." Ray patted her head and said, "You're welcome here, Erica." Inside her mind, Erica was jumping for joy. Her plan was working perfectly. The next morning, Erica woke up early. She went down to the kitchen before anyone else was awake. She opened the fridge and helped herself to some milk and cookies. She walked around the big kitchen, pretending she was the queen of the house. Then, she quietly tiptoed into the living room, looking at all the expensive things: the huge TV, the gold-colored decorations, the fancy furniture. "I could get used to this," she whispered. She started thinking bigger now. Maybe she could even convince Ray and Sophie to let her stay forever. Maybe she could become their favorite. Maybe she could even get them to buy her new clothes, a new phone, and anything else she wanted. "I just have to keep acting sweet," she said to herself. "And soon, everything here will feel like it's mine." Later that day, Sophie took Erica shopping. They went to a big mall filled with bright lights and expensive stores. Sophie told Erica to pick a few clothes since she didn't bring much with her. Erica tried not to look too greedy, but deep down, she wanted to grab everything she saw. She picked some simple clothes: a few dresses, some jeans, and nice sneakers. But secretly, she stared longingly at the glittering jewelry and fancy handbags. She made a mental note to ask for those later once she had gotten closer to Sophie. When they got back home, Erica started doing little things to impress them. She helped clean the house, she helped water the flowers, and even played soft music while Sophie rested. Every time she did something nice, Sophie smiled at her kindly. Erica would smile back sweetly, but inside her mind, she was laughing mischievously. "This is easier than I thought," she said quietly to herself one night as she sat in the cozy living room, sipping orange juice. But Erica's plans didn't stop there. She started snooping around the mansion when no one was looking. She found the master bedroom, the study, and even a secret little room filled with books and old family photos. She didn't touch anything, not yet. She just wanted to know everything about the house. She even made friends with the housekeeper, asking her questions like, "Who's in charge when Sophie and Ray travel?" and "Are there any secret parties here?" The housekeeper found Erica's curiosity funny and didn't suspect a thing. But Erica was gathering information. She was preparing for the future. If she could stay long enough, she could make this mansion her new home and maybe even make sure her brother Eric joined her later. At night, when she lay in her soft bed, Erica stared at the fancy ceiling and smiled her sly smile. "This is just the beginning," she said. "Just watch. I'm going to live like a princess and snatch Ray from Sophie. I want him and his money all to myself, and no one will be able to stop me." She laughed softly into her pillow. Erica was ready for her new life, and her secret plans were only getting started.